Okay. Again, to be respectful of your time, first of all, thank you for being here in the last session of Tech Ed 2013. Who here has been through all 4 sessions?
Oh, what?
Awesome.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
We don't have that many giveaways.
I do not have that many prizes to give away. I don't know what I'm going to do now. You know what? For everyone that's been here for all 4, I will buy you all your drinks tonight.
Oh!
At the Superdome. Where they're already paid for by Microsoft. How's that?
You're all heart, man.
But we do have, if you do have questions during the session, for good questions, for creative questions, that sort of stuff, I do have some stuff that I've been told by legal I am not allowed to throw to get to you. Like, I don't know why they would give someone an ice scraper in Louisiana, but I have an ice scraper to give away.
I have to say that you don't see them a lot in Australia, that's for sure. It looks more like a torture implement than anything
It's not
else.
a torture. It's a back scratcher. It's a back scratcher if you want to do. So I would also just like to say, can I just have a round of applause, please, for the AV guys that have been taking such good care of us.
Woo!
If it was, and that applies to everybody at the entire conference, because if it wasn't for them, we would not sound so good, and I would have absolutely zero voice right now, as it's quickly going. So I got my refill of Earl Grey tea hot up here to go. I think, I haven't switched over yet. There we go. Once again, if you are new to the environment and you're wondering why there's such great camaraderie up here on the stage and with the rest of the room and feeling the love that is migration, we've been here for 4 times in a row. This is the 4th time, so 3 times in a row. And we're talking specifically this time about upgrading your platform for file servers and also storage options. My name is Rick Claus. I'm a senior technical evangelist based out of Redmond at the Corp Mothership, and I'm joined here by my Commonwealth friend, Mr. Macca, otherwise known as Andrew McMurray. From
Australia.
Australia. We love you. Amen. Drink too. We're both on Twitter if you want to get a hold of us at RicksterCDN and also at Macca MSOZ.
Thank you for everyone that's followed me today. Marvelous.
Nice. He did a plug earlier in the last session saying he's looking for some new followers. My Surface Pro over here, for some reason, has lost wireless connectivity. That never happens, right? I can't follow the tweet stream, but if you're interested, I am going to be following after the session MDC B349 in case there are any questions that come up that are not able to be answered. I'll try my best to answer them for you in 140 characters or less.
I suggest waiting until around about 11 p.m. tonight to send them and just see what you get back. Could be really interesting.
And the quality of those answers, too. Autocorrect functionality, engage. So as the other previous 3 sessions, this is my 4th time saying this, what part of IT infrastructure are you the most concerned with upgrading? And it came back with an informal survey. It is absolutely not sanctioned by IDC or by Forrester or by anybody else. This was me simply asking people on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and other people like that. What are you concerned about most when you have to approach an upgrade scenario, and what's the most pressing issue that's out there? You'll notice the most important part out of this is B, 9. The smallest number of respondents came back saying that number 9, 9 entries, number B, came back, and it was the file server. Now, did you just plug in your laptop there? Okay, I was about to say, I hope the demo infrastructure stays on.
The good old file server, mate.
Yeah, the file server is the least loved upgrade scenario that's up there that you're most concerned with. Because I'm assuming, you're all assuming that it's all going to just always be there. It's always going to be there for you.
It's a warhorse, right?
Right. So I decided to follow this up with a different poll, also non-scientific, to see what it came back with. And basically asking about what sort of file server are you running in your organization. And the good thing I like to see here is just around 50%, 48%, is Server 2008 to 2008 R2, which is fantastic. That we have a smaller number of 2003. We have a very small number of 2012. So basically, if you combine 15 plus 10 makes 25, plus 48 makes something I can't add. It's about 73, I think. 73% of people are using Windows-based technology, which is great. And then I love the one here, some other kind of filer thingamajiggy. There are 4 people that said that. And then a NAS devices, and then I don't know what the other answer was. I can actually break that down if you're interested. But basically, the file server is the unsung hero that's out there. And as we like to say, it's your workhorse that is in your stables of servers.
I really, really do want to meet that IT person that has spent their entire career managing to not encounter a file, which, if you look at the previous slide, one person said, I don't have any files.
He's never had any data.
No, never had any. What's that? My computer is like rubbing two sticks together.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So I challenge you, like, when is the last time you actually spent any time physically touching your file server? When's the last time you touched it? It's virtual. That's great. That's one thing I like to hear.
You've never touched it.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. How many people here have virtualized their server, their file servers? Wow, a good number of you already have, which is good. Good to know. The reason why is because, again, it just chugs along, right? Like, it just keeps on running. It serves up files. It has caching issues sometimes. You might have to touch or reset the cache or something like that. You have to do a patch. You have to patch your servers, right? So that requires a restart sometimes. But basically, it spends its day worrying along, tirelessly serving up files and data to your organization. Everything's absolutely fine. It's interesting with the number of people that said they virtualized it, because actually people I talked to said it's actually one of the last ones I virtualized because of the sheer amount of direct attached storage that's on it, by the physical connection to the SAN possibly for LUNs that are attached up to it and things like that. Again, it depends on your organization, depends on your environment. But also, because it is often not looked at, it tends to be one of the most overlooked possibility for upgrades in technologies. So why Windows Server 2012 for file servers? Well, the first thing that you've been seeing this week, the new stuff, which I'm not really supposed to be talking about, but it's R2, it has the ability to do built-in tiering. 2012 by itself does not have the ability to do tiering, but it obviously does have the ability to do storage spaces, which gives you, as I like to say, enterprise class storage capabilities, which means you can abstract physical disk that's attached with a variety of mechanisms. It's shared SAS, if it's iSCSI, if it's private channel or whatever, and you can go off and you can make spaces with these guys. And once you make the space, you then associate the performance of those disks together to get the ability to then make a disk on top of that. That disk gives you the protection layer. This ain't your mama's mirror sets or RAID sets anymore. We're not doing a disk to a disk anymore. That's like 1995 that we're talking that kind of stuff. That's NT4 side of things. When we're talking about making a mirror disk that's a virtual disk over top of a pool, we're taking slabs of data on different sized disks and being able to do the mirroring across it, or being able to do the striping across it if we do parity stuff. So we aren't talking disk to disk. So you can take different sized disks to be able to do stuff, and your data is going to be protected. That's one big advantage of storage spaces that's out there. The next big thing with storage space that's very, very important is obviously this thing that's called NTFS that gives you the ability to do inbox deduplication. No longer having to require to go off and to buy a third-party solution. Do not do deduplication on top of deduplication. You're overextending yourself. Basically, inbox deduplication is a tech box. That's it. Turn it on. It does it. It's on a schedule. You have some simple parameters, and you're able to go off and find out how much is there. Other thing with storage space I forgot to mention was the whole concept of a thinly provisioned disk.
Absolutely.
Just like my garage at home, I have a 3-car garage that I'm renting. I only have 2 cars. Both of them park in the driveway because it's full of all my kids' stuff. It's full of my workshop and my motorcycles in there too. So my cars sit in the driveway getting rained on and getting pollen stuck on them, whereas all my crap is inside my garage right now. No matter how big it is, I never had a garage in my last place I lived in. I'm going to fill it because I got stuff. Same thing with our file servers. So you can actually thinly provision and pretend that 10 terabytes you have is actually 100 terabytes. And as far as the OS is concerned, it's 100 terabytes. And then it'll warn you as you get closer to add more disks into your pool to be able to do it. The next thing is actually under the covers, which is your SMB3. SMB3 is the fire-breathing dragon feature of Server 2012. That is the unsung hero of what it is. And just in case you're wondering, we are actively engaged in working with the industry at making SMB3 available for other people to implement. And you're seeing SAN architectures, filer architectures, and different other solutions adopting SMB3 as well for being able to have multi-session support, for being able to have blazingly fast throughput that's out there to be able to get data on and off of those systems. So it's not this proprietary thing that we're doing. We're working with the industry to make this that we want people to use SMB3 that's out there, and we want to make it available. Also, kind of funny thing too is those NAS devices and those El Cheapo, buy it at Best Buy or whatever it is, solutions that have versions of SMB of some kind on there. We're even talking with them to say at least upgrade from 2.0 to 2.1 or to 2.2 to get up to 3 eventually. Because we don't want to have you guys frustrated with support calls in the small offices, medium offices that are using those consumer-grade NAS devices when you can't find your files because it frustrates you. And who do you blame? Microsoft. You don't blame the NAS device. You blame Microsoft because we make the operating system, right? Other thing for file servers is obviously your NIC teaming in a box. And included with all this sort of stuff is all the goodness that only Jose Barreto can go ahead and actually do any justice to talk about. I strongly recommend going back after, if you have not gone ahead and seen them in person. Download any session that Jose has talked about, because he's a phenomenal speaker, takes extremely complex networking architectures and file system architectures and breaks it down into stuff you can understand and watch them and learn them, because things like RDMA and RSS side scaling and QoS and sort of stuff, he explains them really easy. And the best part about all those technologies, they're just in box. All you have to do is buy a server that has the support for it, and it's on by default. You don't have to worry about going in and tweaking and configuring and changing stuff like that. It's all available and done for you that's in there. Next up is obviously, again, that next massive fire-breathing dragon solution that relies on top of SMB3, relies on top of all these extra additional technologies, which is the scale-out file server role. And the scale-out file server role specifically is designed for a workload of Hyper-V, VHDX files that are open and available, and also SQL databases that are open and available in a multiple server environment. So if one node goes down and you were talking to that node, it knows that it's going to be able to go off and continue to open up and transfer those open handles to the other guy without losing data, without losing transactions, and just keep the whole thing spinning again. This is all built in 2012 today. You can get it right now if you install it right now. And it gets even better when you go 2012 R2 with being able to do dynamic load balancing across all the different things. It's some really, 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 really cool stuff. I had a great interview with Jose on Channel 9 earlier this week. You should go and check that out. Quick question there with Got Geek. So the question is, if you're running 2012 file server and you've got other 2008 file servers. Yep. Okay, so the question is basically for the scale-up file server to be able to run those workloads, which is Hyper-V and also SQL, the two that I'm talking about here, you are not able to leverage and use those from a 2008 R2 server perspective with those workloads. Like if I had a 2008 R2 Hyper-V box, that is correct. You cannot use the Hyper-V workload on that guy there. If you had an older version of SQL that's not SQL 2012, that is correct. You could not use that older version on an individual thing. So make sure you match them up. But that's what you're here for, right? That's why you're inside this room. We're trying to get you to 2012, at least. That way it is the next obvious jumping path to get to 2012 R2 that's out there. I don't think I missed anything. Did I miss anything? I think we covered everything, eh? So the question was basically, so you create your file server, it's 2012, and you still have old legacy clients. I like to say legacy. It doesn't. Windows 7 is legacy now. Does it matter? Can you still use it? And the answer is you can, yes. They just won't be able to leverage the connection of what you can do with multi-session connections with SMB3. SMB3 requires you're running Windows 8 or the next version that's up there. And also to clarify as well, this one other question, is the fact that, I just blanked on it. It's the last session of the day. I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah. It talks at the lowest common denominator. So the best way to test something like that is to get yourself an SMB3 capable file server and put two clients next to each other, and two VMs, whatever you want. Start a file copy job on one of them, being the Windows 8 box that supports SMB3. Start the same file copy job on a Windows 7 box and watch real time versus Martian time. It takes a lot longer because it's falling back to the earlier version of SMB for the older client.
So let's talk about the magic of the storage spaces. We talked about this in the first section where we talk about overall architecture. It's a quick little review for where this goes. I'm talking about architecture from the perspective of Server 2012, current version, shipping version you get right now. The whole process behind this is it's going to be going in and looking for disks that you expose to it through a variety of connection mechanisms, shared SAS or SATA disk or direct attached storage, whatever happens to be, part of a JBOD as an example. You then are able to go in with those physical disks on your server that's running 2012 and create a storage pool where basically you're grouping them by performance. You then are able to go in and once they're grouped, create disks that are either thinly provisioned or thickly provisioned to be able to have a designated size. That's where you lay down your protection. Your protection is going to be simple, where there's nothing. It's going to be mirrored, where it actually is going to have protection on either one disk or two disk failures, or it's going to be parity, where it stripes it across. Word of caution, again, it works at the slab level, not a drive level for being able to do this. Again, it's not your mama's old-fashioned way of doing mirroring and replication. Storage spaces are not able to be done on the operating system volume. It's only your data volumes. You still have to have your OS volume protected with other mechanisms.
It's quite funny too, the types of storage that you can use. So we have these events called IT camps that we run all over the world, and in Melbourne we did a cheeky little demo where we went and bought a USB hub and porcupined it with USB sticks and,
nice.
And provided that as a storage space to the OS. And we had one person in the audience actually put their hand up and honestly ask whether they could plug that into their production server.
Well, technically it would be...
You do what you like, now on your way.
Technically it would be supported, but it's probably the worst idea you could possibly do.
Now, it looked really cool, though.
Now, this is an interesting caveat, again, because I did the interview with Jose earlier this week. He was telling me, we had a question come up online on Twitter. How does it know, with our 2 version, how does it know that there's an option of different speed disks to be able to offer this tiering capabilities? And what it does basically is the OS is going to go off and query the data on the disk, the metadata of the disk, the characteristics of the disk. And there's a rotation speed setting. And if the rotation speed equals 0, that's a solid state. Everything else is lumped together as slow disk. So it only will work with a solid state drive or rotation speed of everything else. That's how it knows that it has the ability to do tiering. That's only in R2, it's not 2012. Go take a look at that interview for more details. Jose did a great job explaining it. And yes, before anyone asks, he actually figured out what the PowerShell commandlet was to be able to interrogate your disks to figure out how many are solid state and how many are not. So once you do that, you go ahead and you make your virtualized storage spaces. You make them available inside your system. You then have the ability to dynamically expand upon those by adding more drives as required because it's the way the storage pool works. And in case you're wondering as well, you can actually detach those storage pools and then add them into a different server and then assume ownership of them and then continue to keep on working with those storage pools. So you're not tied into the registry and the data of the server that it's stored into. It's actually with those disks that's in there. And then finally, it goes off and works basically across the board for all the other Server 2012 capabilities because you expose it as a volume, and that volume is going to be NTFS and possibly has a deduplication turned on or turned off that's out there. And then obviously that goes off and talks to this from a point of view of your application servers or your file servers on top of that. So every other technology, VDI, virtualization, domain controllers, WSUS as an example, all those other technologies that are built in 2012 can leverage and use these storage spaces. The best part about this whole thing, Maka, what's the interface you use to make storage spaces?
Just Server Manager.
You got her. So
fantastic. Nice and easy.
He'll be doing a demonstration about this sort of stuff in just a little bit here. The next big thing that we talk about, question way in the back over there.
So with the parity and all that kind of stuff, should you or should you not, or when should you use, say, like a hardware RAID controller versus parity?
Yep. So the question comes back with basically with this concept of making the virtual storage, making the storage space and having the disk, and you're laying down a mirroring or a parity and striping of data across that data, when would you be using an actual hardware-based RAID solution as well as the storage space at the same time? And the answer to that is you actually wouldn't. You'd be slowing it down if you were. And you would be providing additional redundant support or protection that basically is just going to end up consuming and harvesting available storage space away because hardware-based RAIDs are typically going to be doing it at the disk-by-disk basis, whereas this is going to be doing it at a slab basis across different sized disks. And also this works across enclosures. So basically, again, I use hardware-based RAID solutions if I want to be using a clustered shared volume disk like an LSI controller or something like that to be able to do some shared disk between two different nodes of a cluster, or I would be using it to protect my OS drive or maybe my page file drive or something like that to make sure it's protected against disk failure. Because if I don't protect my OS drive at the hardware level, because storage spaces cannot be done on the OS level, then if I lose that drive, my storage space is useless. I have to migrate it to a different box. Does that answer your question? I hope so. Okay. what we'll do is we'll basically, again, we'll take questions at the end. If maybe you'll interject a couple more as you have some time. And likewise as well, you can always come and find me at the party tonight, and we can have a conversation over some pints. Yes, ma'am? Great question. The question is, what about REFS, the resilient file system? Version in 2012, REFS is lacking in the ability to go off and to do deduplication. And also, there's a couple of other slight nuances that it can't do. And it definitely has some advantages to it. At this point in time, it's basically being recommended to be used for very large file systems that are file-based stuff, not for the scale-up file server, not for this stuff like that, because it's not supported. So REFS at this point in time is for file servers that have very large, massively large indexes. You can actually fit, if I remember correctly from my math, 18 quintillion files in a single directory. And in case you're wondering how big 18 quintillion files are, that's the same thing as covering every single possible square centimeter, or inches if you're in the States, of space on this Earth with a penny, and you'd be able to cover and coat the entire Earth 4 times. That's 18 quintillion in one directory. So you can see why we're going for future growth opportunities from our file systems. Save me some disk space, mate. Basically, this is, again, deduplication. We're going to show you some demonstration of deduplications coming up that's available in just a little bit. So you know what? I'm going to get out of the way and actually let you go off and talk about this and show it as opposed to me talk about it all the time there, Matt.
All right. Thanks very much. Okay, so I've got myself a file server here, 2008, 2012, I should say. At the moment, I've got a couple of 2008 file servers here already with some data that I want to get moved across to 2012. But before I want to go ahead with that, first thing I want to do is create myself a new volume here, and I want to thinly provision myself a 2 terabyte volume so that I can continue to add physical disks to that as I go along. So from here, what I'll do is I'll just jump into file and storage services, because right now, we haven't really done anything other than prepare the machine. In fact, I've got to do one other thing first, because if I forget to add in data deduplication, I'm going to be in trouble. So we're actually going to go and do an add roles and features wizard here, like so. And under file and storage services, and under file and iSCSI services.
Oh, yeah. I threw a curveball at him and asked him to show off the deduplication stuff in this demo.
Yeah, it wasn't actually intending to at first, but that's all right. You can see that I've got deduplication in here. Now, for the sake of time, I'm also going to install file server, DFS namespace, DFS replication, file server resource manager on here now. We're going to be doing some smarts with DFS namespace and DFS replication to essentially retire our 2008 file servers and bring them across to 2012. So I'm just going to put in file server, data dedup, DFS namespaces, DFS replication, file server resource manager, and I'll move ahead and get those installed. Now, I do apologise for making everyone watch the role wizard again, but I know you love it.
And I'll repeat it again. Can you do this on the server, or do you have to do this on the server?
I don't have to do this on the server. I can do this from my Windows 8 machine. Begging the question from Rick, why didn't you?
Right.
Answer is pretty slack. So,
Nice.
So I didn't. All right, so we're just going to let that reboot, and that will come back up very quickly, being the file server that it is. And
updates? What?
no, I'm configuring features, Rick. I've just installed some features,
Oh, okay.
as opposed to configuring updates. So,
Okay.
and what I really like about this is just how fast this boots off my little SSD.
Yeah.
Remember the days when you used to have Windows 2000, Windows NT4, whatever, and it was a case of go get yourself a coffee while we're booting up, come back a little later on, and you'll be right. Now, as you can see, we've already booted back up again, so it was really quite fast. And we'll log back in. And up will come Server Manager, ready for us now to create our storage space and get that data ready. So, Server Manager, here it comes. And what you're going to see, or what we expect you'll see as we go a little bit further along down the track, is more and more of these administrative functions will start coming into Server Manager, won't they, Rick? So at the moment, you may be familiar with running lots and lots and lots of different administrative tools. But when we start bringing in the administrative experience into Server Manager, it's really a much better experience. We're really focusing Server Manager on having that kind of modern UI type experience, because we're not allowed to call it what we used to call it. And you get a much richer administrative experience as it comes across. So you can see here, any minute now we'll get our file and storage services come over. You always expect a few redness aspects to come up at the start as we wait for certain delayed start services to come up, and we should be able to go into storage and file services any second now. Any second now. Here we go.
But there you go. Never mind.
Right. Now, you can see in here in file and storage services, I'm just going to jump down to storage pools here, and you can see at the moment we have a primordial pool that's been created, and the primordial pool consists of 3 disks that are available. Now, you'll notice that these disks are 127 gig each. They're just representative of some virtual hard disks that I've created ahead of time. And what I want to do is I want to present those physical disks as a pool of virtualized storage onto which I will create a volume which thinks that it's 2 terabytes in size, whereas in actual fact it's only somewhere around about 360 gig in size in reality. So first thing I need to do is go to my physical disks and choose to create a new storage pool. What I'll do is I'll very carefully read the instructions that are given to me. Then I'll create myself a pool. I've got to give it a name. As you can see, at this time of the day, after 4 of these, my ability to come up with anything other than pool 1 is diminishing.
It's rather limited, yes.
It is rather limited. And you'll notice here that we can now choose which of these physical disks we actually want to add in to that particular storage pool. You'll notice too that when we choose to add a disk in, we can make that either automatically part of the pool or we can designate that as a hot spare drive and only utilise that when necessary. So I'm going to choose these for all automatic. Go ahead and create that pool, and I'm done. I now have a pool of storage that I can go and create a virtual disk on to present to the operating system for the purposes of creating volumes on top of. So what I'll now do from the pool is choose to create a new virtual disk. Obviously use the pool that it's come from here. Give it a name. Call it vdisk1. And now choose my layout. So my options here are, right, well, this is going to be just a simple disk, mirror disk, or a parity. So we'll go for, what do you reckon, parity? Parity sounds pretty good.
Actually, I'll comment on that just before anyone goes
sure.
through. I was talking with Jose about this, and people were asking about performance issues and that sort of stuff. You're going to be getting obviously better performance if you're going with a mirrored solution. It's going to be more expensive on the disk side of things, but as far as performance is concerned, because you can do parallel reads and writes to those mirrors as opposed to only being striped across one. With 2012 R2, we added in write-back cache capabilities for the parity side. Currently, this does not have write-back cache in 2012, so the R2 version does improve the parity speed. It depends on where you want to go from a performance perspective. If you want the most raw performance with best protection, mirror is the way to go.
Cool. Well, I'm going to stick with parity, so there. All right, now.
Just shot me down right there. Thank you.
Now we can have an option as to what we want to do here. Is this a fixed size where we'll completely allocate that size volume, or will we go with thin provisioning? So we're interested in making this appear as a 2 terabyte pool, so we'll go with thin provisioning. Choose next. Designate our size. Go with 2 terabytes here. Like so. And then simply go ahead and do it. Bear in mind, everything I did here I could have done through
PowerShell.
Exactly. All right, now I want to create myself a volume on top of it, and you'll notice that with these wizards, they tend to prompt you on to the next step. So if you're not quite sure what to do with those physical disks when you've made them into a pool, and then what do I do next? Go to a virtual disk or whatever. You'll notice that in the wizards, we actually prompt you to that next portion. So we're going to create a volume now and actually make this available to the operating system. We'll give it a size of 2 terabytes. We'll give it a drive letter of E. It sounds pretty good. And we're going to format that as NTFS. And now, okay, data dedupe. Do you want to turn on data deduplication on this volume? So I definitely want to do that. And by default, we won't attempt to dedupe any files at all unless they're older than 5 days. Now, that's going to be a problem for a demo because
we need to speed it up.
We need to speed it up, and I need to go home tomorrow, so I'm not going to particularly hang around for the next 5 days. So we'll make that 0 days so we can get it going straight away. Now what we'll do is we'll create that.
The question was that based on create or last modified? And the answer is that is actually last access.
And there you see we have a new volume here. So I'll go and create myself a folder on there. I don't know, call it data or something like that. And while I'm here, we'll have a look at the size of the disk. You can see it's 2 terabytes, but in actual fact, we know very well underneath that it's really only about 300 meg. And if we go back into our volume section here, we can actually get an idea of exactly how big that is. We get information about the size, what's really allocated into it, and so on and so forth. So now, in order to test this data deduplication, what we might do is grab ourselves a reasonably big file. Well, it's not that big in today's reckoning, and this is a 200 meg boot.wim, and I'm going to copy that into my data volume. Cool. Whoops, beg your pardon. And I'll also paste it here as well. There we go. Okay, so I've basically copied that across twice. Now,
you're not going to show the results yet? You're going to save that, or just have it all ready to go?
All right, I'll leave it. If you want to move on.
Do you want to see it now, or you want to wait till later? The deduplication results. He's now made a bunch of extra data. He's now going to basically manually kick it off. Do you want to see it now? Okay.
Righto.
For those of you that want to leave early, you can do it now. Go ahead.
All right. So I'll just put myself into presentation mode with PowerShell, otherwise it's not going to look so good. And now what we'll do is we'll run a start dedupe job, like so, of type optimization. You've got to love this IntelliSense. Minus volume, we're doing it across E. We'll fire that off. Oh, what did I do wrong there? There we go. Whoops.
Okay, it is the last session of the day. We'll give him that one, okay?
All right.
We'll give him that one.
Now we'll get a get dedupe job. And we're going to run this a few times to wait for it to finish, because as you can see at the moment, it's currently at a progress of 0. Now it's completed already, progress of 100%. So now what we'll do is we'll get a get dedupe status. Okay, and you can see that we've optimized 2 of those files, and across those 2 files, we've actually saved 194.23 megabytes, which, coincidentally is the size of that file. So what we've done is we've got 2 copies of the file on that particular volume, but of course we're only taking up the space of one of them because they're identical. So we've deduplicated every identical block out of that. Rick?
Are you back already? We're done?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Rick fail. I forgot to hit the right button to say go back to the same slide. There we go. So we've prepared the file servers. We have the new storage space available. We have a thinly provisioned drive all set to go. And Mac has gone ahead and actually set up and enabled deduplication at my request as our demo conversations from last night, how to spice things up. The next thing up is actually going ahead and getting ready to actually migrate those file servers. So now picture that's the fact that you have 2002 systems or 2003 systems that are out there, and you need to be able to get those UNC file names with all that data and all those ACLs and everything else. It's a big snake's nest, rat hole nest of everything over from the old thing to the new thing that you want to be able to go off and to use. What utilities and available stuff that you have to be able to work with? Well, there's a couple of different options, but the option that we're going to be showing you today is, again, that whole concept that I already told you about at the very beginning and reiterate at each one of these sessions is leveling up your skill set and your availability. Stop thinking about these things as file shares that are hard-coded, machine name, share name. That makes it very difficult to think about this as a storage fabric that is no longer tied to specific machines. What is the way that you can abstract server name, share name inside this environment, Mr. Macca?
Oh, we could use DFS namespace if we wanted to.
DFS namespace is definitely the way to go. If you don't already have DFS namespace already up and in place, you should think about trying to implement it inside your work environments. If you do have it already in place, there's a pretty simple process to go off and start to do this, or process if you're American. So what we're going to be showing you right here is basically, let's pretend our file server is attached to either locally attached storage or is attached to a SAN environment. And then we have a DFS namespace in place, in this case actually going off and serving up additional DFSR replica copies down to those branch offices. We're not going to deal with the DFSR replica copies at this point in time. We're looking at swapping out that middle tier to get away from having hard-coded machine name / share name resource access to it. What we're going to be basically doing is bringing in multiple different file servers. This is an old graphic that I grabbed off of the web. Please pardon my typos on there. I'm basically introducing 2012-based systems as additional DFSR replica partners inside that environment. Once replication is basically your achieved level of stasis, and we're all common across the board, we can then start to get rid of those old systems that are out of there and now go from a nice clean point of view. We now have 2012 doing our DFSR replica. We're actually going to let DFSR replica do the heavy lifting of replicating the data from the old side to the new side, so we don't have to worry about it. You could go off and do it. Actually, I'll say that for you for the demo, because you're going to be showing that, right? Or not showing, at least showing how to set it up. Okay, so that's basically where we're going to go. So let's talk about DFS migration itself.
Okay.
There you go.
Alrighty. So at the moment we're on our 2012 file server 1, and one of the great things about DFS replication and going through this particular method of moving the file server across is we can actually pre-provision the data across to this particular machine by utilising Windows Server Migration Tools or robocopy with a /sec command in order to bring the ACLs across and get that data from its original place to its new place ahead of time. Then, when we bring in the file servers as new DFS namespace servers as well as DFS replica partners, we don't need to do that initial set of replication. We'll just compare what we've already got, we'll send the deltas across, and then we're ready to go. So it gets that entire process done a lot quicker. So what I'm going to do firstly is show you how we can actually take some data from our original file server across, and we're going to utilise the Windows Server Migration tool in order to do that. Now, if we go to our 2008 file server here, just want to show you the type of data that we've got. If we go into our local disk and go into data, you'll see that we have 4 folders that are currently being replicated as part of DFS namespace and DFS replica. At the moment, if an end user wants to get access to any of these shares, rather than having to know the server name that they're connecting to, they simply connect to corp.contoso.com/public, and we end up in that particular namespace. What we will then do is we will select the folder that we want to work with, and we'll be handed off to the appropriate DFS replica, make some changes there, they replicate across all of the other members of the replica set.
So you've abstracted yourself away from IP address lock-in, from machine name lock-in by using DFS namespace.
Absolutely right. If we go into our engineering folder here, you'll see we've got a very nice Windows Server 2012 feature comparison document here, which I'm sure you'd all like to read, as well as some demo documents and some demo pictures. And what I've done, it's around about 100 meg of information, and what I've done is I've just duplicated all of that across each of those folders so I've got something to replicate. All right, so I want to bring in the new 2012 file server to this. So rather than me just begin the replication from scratch, I'm going to use those server migration tools to take this data. I almost said an Australianism there and I stopped myself. To take this data and then move it across to its destination before we actually bring it into the replica set. So I've effectively done a pre-cache of that. Okay, first thing I'm going to need to do is actually go to the destination server that is going to receive this. And you can see that this is the machine I just set up. I've got myself a new volume here that's 2 terabytes in size, but not really, with that data volume on it. First thing I'm going to do here is come along and...
Want to make that bigger so they can see it?
Yep, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
No, not zoom it. They change the properties.
That's right. Let me just change that.
There we go.
Excellent. And I'm going to run a receive SMIG server data. Now, what this command is going to do is essentially open up a receiving pipe, if you will, for a source server to actually transfer some data across. Now, this utilises TCP and UDP port 7000, so you need to make sure that these are open on the firewall. And when I fire this particular command off, I get asked to supply a password. And what I'm going to need to do on the other end of the connection, the source server that I'm going to send the files to the destination server from, I will have to re-put that password in as well, otherwise I won't be able to send that data across. So I will put in my password here, and it's basically just going to open the connection and wait for me to go to the source server and get this going. If I jump across to my source server, being the 2008 machine, I will then go and run the appropriate command on the other end. As you can see here, the appropriate command on the other end is a send SMIG server data command. What we're doing then is we're choosing the computer name we're sending to, which is 2012 file server 1, the source path, which is C data, the destination path, which is E data. We're going to do a recursive copy, so we're going to get everything under that data directory, and we're then going to force that. What we're also going to do is we're going to capture the ACLs and we're going to send them across as well so that we have ACLs intact and we don't have to worry about redoing that. As we said before, you could use robocopy for this, and in a lot of circumstances, robocopy may be better off from the purposes of scale.
So, I just mentioned, from a scale perspective, the tools that are here does it in encrypted form, makes it secure, it allows you to go from point to point, but scalability-wise, you'll probably find performance issues are going to keep this guy from really lighting it up. But it definitely does work. It's going to preserve all the ACLs. It's all set.
Yep.
The robocopy command is definitely another option, an alternative option you can look at for being able to do it. And obviously, you're going to be using whatever version of SMB client on the one side, talking to the other side, so you can't get multi-session support with Server 2012 until you get up and are using this between two 2012 boxes. That was my disclaimer. I made sure I wanted to get in.
Okay, I do believe I just opened that up on file server 2 by accident. Yes, I did. So I'll just quickly open it up on file server 1 again. That's what happens when you've got too many
uniquely named servers.
Uniquely named servers. Yes, indeed.
While he's working there, I'll take a question here, Dan. The question is there any plans to port SMB3 to down-level clients? And the answer to that is no. There are no plans to port SMB3 down to 2008 R2 or to previous versions, legacy versions of Windows.
Okay, so you can see now back on the other end of the server, it's spotted the fact that the connection's open and it's sending everything across. Once
I like
that
how
is
it's
complete,
everyone ready? Ooh, just like it says on the screen. Good.
All right, still sending. Obviously, this entire thing is encrypted because we don't want to cause any security issues there. This can take extensive time, that's right.
Yeah, and again, it's...
Luckily, we have all the time in the world.
If we went the route of basically he's pre-populating DFS destination and then going to do the DFS stuff, he could have done this just with pure DFS replication, and it would take a considerable amount of time to be able to replicate between the two servers as well. Or he also could have done the disconnect the old store if it was a SAN environment and reconnect to the new one as one option as well.
Absolutely. The other reason this might be taking a little bit more time is because the laptop is now hot enough to fry an egg. And
the laptop's been working very hard over the last 4 sessions.
We're almost there now. Okay, now while we're waiting for that to occur, if we just have a very quick look at the data itself, I'll take the properties of one of the folders and just have a quick look at the security. You can see there that we've got some customized groups with access there. So we want to see that come across at the other end. Now what we're getting is the verbose output of the tool, just letting us know the result of everything that was copied across. Now that's because I put verbose in. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be seeing all of this information. So we're just waiting for that to complete. And there's a fair bit of it going across. But rather than watch it, we'll jump over to the 2012 file server 1. And over in the data directory, you can see we now have the 4 folders they've come across. And if we open up the properties and have a look at the security there, you'll see that all of those ACLs are intact. Right. Now, the next thing we need to do, now that we've pre-populated the data, is we need to bring these 2 new servers in as additional DFS namespace servers so we can get a replica information of the namespace itself. Then what we want to do is we want to replicate the contents of those folders. Once we've done that, and once we know that the replication has worked successfully, we can then proceed to remove the 2008 versions of those file servers that are participating in that DFS namespace replication and the DFS folder replication, leaving us with just 2012 servers. So what I'll do now is jump back into my file server here, and I'll open up the DFS management tool, like so. Okay, when we open up the DFS management tool, what we do is we interrogate, or at least we should be able to see it. I'll just add that. Here we go. We'll interrogate the namespace, and we'll open up our replication groups so we can see them in our particular management tool. So we can see that there's currently a namespace called corp.contosa.com/public. If I click on that, you'll see straight away that there are two namespace servers that are supporting this file server, 2008 file server 1 and 2008 file server 2. You'll notice that within that namespace we have 4 folders, being engineering, marketing, sales and support. If we go and look at those individual folders under the replication section here, you can see that those folders are actually replicated to both, well, you can't because you can't see the ends of the names, are both replicated to 2008 file server 1 and 2008 file server 2. Now what I'll do is at the namespace level, I'll add some more namespace servers. I'll browse for 2012 file server 1. I'll also take 2012 file server 2. Oops, and it doesn't want to do it more than once. So I'll just put in that one, bring that across. It's just making sure that it's able to connect. Checking the server status. I'm waiting for that to finish. There we go. And we'll add in number 2 as well, because we want to make sure that we've continued to got high availability here, especially given that we're going to remove both of our 2008 servers. So we'll bring that one over as well, and we'll do the same thing. Now you can see that we have 4 namespace servers participating in this namespace. Now what I'll need to do is simply go and add new replica members to the individual folder. So what I'll do is I'll browse for, again, 2012 file server 1, or file server 2, whatever. I'll just do it quickly. I'll take them both if it's going to give me the option. Choose my replication schedule. Go on, sorry.
I have to pause for 3 seconds first. This is just standard DFS stuff that we're doing right now, by the way, in case you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remember that one, do file server 2 only. All right, choose the same replication group schedule.
Local path.
Oh, beg your pardon. Put in the local path. This was, I do believe, engineering, wasn't it? Click create. Okay, it now creates me a new member for that, so we're now involved in that replica cycle. Now I've got to do this a number of times. It's a little bit tedious, unfortunately, but maybe Rick can pad for me while we do it for the others, just so we can see this done.
A little bit of dancing, anybody?
Trust me, the results are worth it.
So, yeah, this is where I would have put in only like one, but I guess.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to prove that I could do it for lots.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So he'll slap me about that later on.
Oh, trust me, I will.
Oh, jeez.
While we're waiting on this to continue off and he's continuing plugging through this, again, I wanted to remind you about those evals that you need to fill out and the importance of doing the evals, and commentary and verbatims on those emails are also very important as well, especially highlighting just how fantastic these sessions were, just as well the type of sessions that you would like to see at TechEd, because we take every single constructive criticism inside those evals very, very seriously as part of the team that puts on TechEd every year.
Oh, and I almost got there just as you'd
I know,
be saying that.
I'm trying to pad some more. I don't know
now,
what else to say.
Just a quick show of hands. Who wants to see me do this for file server 1 as well, or are you happy to just accept it?
I think we can pretend it was also done for file server 1 as well, just so that we can continue along with it.
All right, excellent. So now
Because
what
I want to get everyone out on time, right?
Right, so now what you can see is for each of these 4 folders, we now have 3 replica sets. 2008 file server 1, 2008 file server 2, 2012.
And you've also preceded all the data.
And we've preceded all of this, so, and depending, of course, on when you preceded this versus when you actually added the replica set, I'm either getting no replication or potentially only a small amount of replication if not a lot of time has elapsed.
Right.
So now what I'll do is I'll go about dismantling everything else. So, for instance, for the engineering section here, I will remove 2008 file server 1. And I will remove 2008 file server 2. Refresh that. I'll do the same thing again.
And once again, I will just do the standard cautionary tale of we are compressing this down to fit into 60 minutes. You would not normally be doing it as fast as this because you do have to have replication converge across all the different systems. Otherwise, you will get unpredictable results, is the nice way to say it, I guess, to do it.
And finally, support. We'll get rid of support. Right, just refresh that. So now we have a namespace that consists of, as you can see, a number of servers here, but we have the membership, which is only now on 2012 file server 2. Now just pretend we also had it on file server 1. What we now do is we simply remove the 2008 file servers from being namespace servers, like so. And all things being equal, we should still now be able to open up a UNC connection to corp.contoso.com/public and still be able to browse those folders. And what we've effectively done...
I was going to say, before you actually try to do that, I'm just going to say again, replication takes time. We're rushing it. It might pop up with an error message, so
it might.
We'll see if it comes up in time. Drum roll, please. Can you type it? Oh. Should not put 2 backslashes first?
Yeah, hang on a moment. I'll just... Yeah, we've just gone a little bit too quick, unfortunately.
I think you had a forward slash in the way you typed it because it's the 4th session straight today that we've been working, and you cannot even read the screen. And there we go.
So there we go. Now, and there it is. We're in. We still have data. There's a whole bunch of pictures in here. We could just go berserk now.
Nice.
And by the way, remember, we've left 2008, no more.
So
now purely 2012
2003 is no longer required. We now have 2012 listed in there, and we're set and ready to go to be able to continue with this abstraction away from putting in server name / share name, IP addresses, and other things along those lines. And we're leveraging all the underlying technologies of NIC teaming and SMB3 and RDMA and ABCDEFG. It's all now able to be done. Now, there's ABCDEFG is that hidden feature you guys don't know about yet. There is also along this line of things, one other thing we want to make sure we talked about, but this is, again, this was covered in a different session already this week in much deeper detail than what we're doing right here, right now. And this is basically the ability to go through and to migrate your clusters from 2008 R2 up to and into 2012, including all the different types of roles that are part of those clusters and the data associated with them over to the other side as the final linchpin of everything that needs to be done to get you up to 2012 and ready for 2012 R2. Do we have time for this demo still? Do we? Maybe? Yeah, we think so?
Yeah, you want to see it?
Okay, let me just quickly kind of go through this. So basically, there's a Migrate to Cluster Wizard box. They actually show you this one from a 2012 R2 system. This is actually a snapshot from a 2012 system, what it looks like, being able to run through this particular thing. The idea behind this is that you're going to be going through and you have the ability to run this through, check the advanced logs before it actually happens, checks the what-if scenarios after the fact. You can run and test this without having to go ahead and impact your customers or production ahead of time. It is reversible if you have any issues. It's also very useful for copying roles over to test environments. Quick note to the guys leaving, don't forget your evals. Thanks a lot for coming out. Try the steak. Copy cluster roles, wizard storage. Assume that the storage will be reused between the old server and the new server, new cluster. It does not copy the data, it just does the cluster roles, setting from the old server to the new server. You have to worry about getting the data from the shared volume on one to the shared volume on the other. You can reattach it, basically. And then this guy over here, basically, the yellow are what we're talking about for 2012. The white is what we're talking about for 2008, what you can bring across for different types of systems. The ones that are absolutely not supported with this, SQL, Exchange, Print Spooler, Remote Desktop Connection Broker, DFSR, Volume Shadow Copy, Task Scheduler Task, and also the cow, or cluster we're updating. Those are not supported. That's also a 2012 feature anyway. It's not 2002. And then you basically have, when you run this, you get a nice report that tells you if it would work correctly, if there were problems, if there were issues, that you want to do this. This is just like the cluster validation reports. You must read these. Essential information is in here. Make sure you read them. That's in there. And with that, we have enough time to be able to show.
We sure do.
Show? Okay.
Yep. All righty. So I just want to make this really clear. Using the cluster migration wizard will cause a downtime, because what we're doing here is we're connecting to the shared storage that's in use by the current server 2008 R2 cluster. What we're then doing is we're connecting to the original cluster, we're reading all of the metadata about all of the objects that are needed to actually service that cluster, we're migrating them across to 2012. When we come across to 2012, they'll all be in an offline state. We've simply copied the data across. So we understand what the network name is of the cluster, which unfortunately I called 2008 R2 cluster FS, so it's kind of look a little bit stupid when it comes across. But anyway, sorry about that. And we're going to know all about what we need to connect to and what we need to register on the network, and of course what virtualized IPs we're using in order to service those virtual network names. And once that's all across, what we will do is we will go back to the original server and we will offline the file server. Then we'll go back to 2012 and we'll online the file server. So the downtime will be that point in time where we go off on the original cluster, bring us up on the new cluster, and once we know we're up and running and we've verified connectivity, we can decommission the old cluster.
And just to be completely clear, when he was talking about file server, he's actually talking about the data. So it's not necessarily a file server we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
It's actually the iSCSI target, or it is the SAN LUN, that sort of stuff.
So right now, if I was to do a run command, and hopefully type it properly this time, go to 2008 R2 cluster FS, you'll see that this brings up a data share, and again, I've got my demo docs, demo pics, etc. on that. Now that's currently being serviced by the 2008 cluster. The 2008 cluster is connected to some shared storage, and what I'm going to do is I've opened up my local iSCSI initiator here, and I'm going to connect myself to the same shared storage that that particular cluster is connected to. So I'll just hit the connect here, and you can see I'm now connected to that. What I'll now do is I'll jump back across to my 2008 cluster nodes, just to give you a look at what the cluster looks like. So here you can see my 2008 cluster node. I've got my file server. It's currently online. The current owner is 2008 cluster node 1. You can see in here we have two nodes in this cluster, cluster node 1, cluster node 2. We have our shared storage, which we're connected to, and we have our cluster network. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this metadata information, we're going to migrate it across to 2012 and leave it in that off state initially. Jumping back across to 2012, we now want to bring this cluster across so we can get rid of it. I'm in the new version of Cluster Manager. And you can see I've got myself already got myself a file server cluster over on 2012 as well. We're bringing over another file server cluster across. In order for me to do this, I need to fire off the cluster migration wizard, which I can do by right-clicking the name of the cluster itself, going to More Actions and choosing Migrate Roles. Now, if anyone went to Ben Armstrong's session and Jose Barreto's session yesterday, you'll notice that this is now no longer called Migrate Roles, it's called something else, and I can't remember what it is, but it has actually changed. So, not that it really matters that much. And for some reason it won't go out of Zoom it. There we go. So I'll choose to Migrate Roles. This brings up the Migrate Roles wizard. Click Next. And we'll type in the name of the cluster that we want to connect to. It's called 2008 R2 cluster. Just browse for that. And what it does is it connects across. it interrogates the cluster and finds all of the different clustered services and applications on top of it. And what it then allows me to do is choose exactly what it is that I want to migrate across. So I'm going to take the file server. Now, if I'm not quite sure what's actually going to come across here at this point right now, I can choose to view a report on what's out there. So if I hit view report, that's going to come up and tell me exactly what it is that we intend to do. Tell me exactly what it is that we intend to do.
We intend to finish this demo.
We intend to finish this demo. So instead, we'll hit next and we'll go ahead anyway.
We'll come back to that report.
Yeah, we'll come back to that report. That'll come up. Oh, there we go. The report's come up. There you go. You see that we've got some initial information there. And we'll tell it to go ahead and migrate. The migrate finishes, gives us a migration report. I'm not even going to bother clicking view report again. And now if we open up the cluster manager and click roles, you'll see that our 2008 R2 cluster FS, whoops, we'll never call it that again, has come across in a stopped state. Now this is exactly what we expect, because right now, where's it currently running? 2008. So just to prove that, what we'll do is we will open up a run command once again. And you can see it's still available, because it's still running on the R2 side.
Yep.
Now this is where we incur the downtime. So we're all ready, we're ready to go, everyone's happy, everyone's gone home for the night, whatever the case may be. What we do now is we simply go across to 2008 and we take the application offline. Goes into an offline state. And then over in 2012, we bring it online.
That's it?
If it starts, that's it, yes.
Fantastic.
And it's running. We're done. So, what we'll do now is we'll just very quickly go back to that same place, because remember the network name is called 2008 R2 Cluster FS. Bag me on Twitter if you want. And there you go, we're still going.
Nice.
Done.
Fantastic,
You just migrated your
Becca.
file server cluster.
Woo! Dude, you just survived 4 sessions worth of demos. It's mind-blowing.
I'm trashed.
Mind-blowing. It's also mind-numbing at points, too. But a couple little bit of tidy-up items that are here, too. First of all, from a file server migration perspective, what are your options if you still have the whack server/share? You do not have a scale-up file server. You do not have a file server cluster. Or you do not have DFS in place. Our suggestions here are basically you can use the server migration tools. And the main thing you're going to want to use that for is for your group migration, your computer name migration, and your IP address migration. Because you know people have gone in and hard-coded whack server name someplace in applications, and the new server is not going to answer to that. So that's why you need to migrate the computer name over there and get rid of the old computer that's out there. You know people have also done whack IP address as well, because they're trying to be cool and not worry about the names. They like looking at map drives with IP addresses. So you got that covered as too. The group migration is for the purposes of maintaining your ACLs, to make sure the ACLs all work too. And the final point on that page is the migration tools actually will be potentially slower to do your migration. Instead, what you could do is simply do the group migration, the computer name migration, the IP address migration, and then do a robocopy across. Because robocopy is multi-threaded. It also has the ability to have up to 28 threads running at once. Default is 8. And it can also copy all your security descriptors with all your ACLs and entries in there across the board as well. Or you could simply detach the LUN that was attached to that file server and reattach it to the new server as an example. Those are all viable examples for being able to migrate. Now, if you happen to be using one of those NAS devices or some other type of device that is not a server that you've invested in, you can continue to use that if you wanted to. There's no problem to still continue to use those individual solutions. They're perfectly fine. Don't just throw them out because you have the new option of going this direction. However, if you do decide to migrate the data off of that and use storage spaces R2 version that contains tiering, there are no ways to get the data off of that other than the robocopy or the file copy options. So just be aware of that when you go down that way. Now, I'm going to once again shout out the whole concept of architecturally with these technologies of server space, with storage spaces, with these technologies of Server 2012 with the ability to have JBODs being used and inexpensive disks and that sort of stuff. The cluster-in-a-box hardware design is, again, something that is very attractive for what you can use as a new building block to be able to do things. And this is, again, looking at this from a purpose of this is a compute node, this is a virtualization node, this is a storage node with the way that you're going off and you're thinking. And if you ask anybody an optimal design for being able to support a very large private cloud, if you went to that particular environment session that Jose had, scale out file servers, front-ending your storage, whatever flavor it happens to be, talking to a hypervisor that is running on Hyper-V as an example on Server 2012 or 2012 R2, that is clustered, but pointing to all the VHDX files that are up on those SMB scale-up file server shares is going to get you one of the best bangs for your buck as far as performance-wise. Phenomenal stuff with what we're doing with RDMA, with everything else that's in there. And then again, I want to, if you haven't had a chance right now, they're already packed up and are leaving right now. So if you run, you might still be able to see one of these boxes in action from Data On as an example with the DNS 9220. And again, this is where it happens to fit inside your environment. What do we got left here? Just double checking if I missed anything. Nah, that's it. You know what? I'm going to say it has been our pleasure to be here in this room for the last 4 sessions. You've been a fantastic audience, and I've already reminded you before, but I thought I'd give you a very cute and easy URL. Just in case you need to evaluate and tell people how these sessions were, aka.ms/Rick and Maca will make it.
Can I just say thanks to Rick for being able to keep that voice of his going the entire day. I think he's done a marvellous job. So thank you very much, mate.
Hey, anytime. There were questions about will these slides be available because they aren't there right now. They will be available when you go to your downloads of the recorded sessions within 24 to 48 hours. I have been instructed by my track PM that I must walk this stick over to her computer as soon as I am done to make sure that you guys have access to all those slides and all those resources. The other additional resources you can take a look at in case you're forgetting, www.microsoftvirtualacademy.com for free bite-sized training about a whole bunch of stuff that we looked at. Maca actually went and created an MVA course specifically on upgrading that will be published over the next couple of weeks and months that covers all this content that we just talked about over these last 4 sessions. Congratulations to you for putting that up there, my friend.
Mate.
And obviously, if you have not, as of yet, played with 2012, what are you waiting for? Go get it. technet.microsoft.com/eval center, 180-day eval you can go off and use in a test and lab environment. Do not put that in production. And on June 26th, during the Build Conference, we will be making available the pre-release downloads of the R2 edition. And with that, I will say adios, good night, TechNet or TechEd 2013. It's been a blast. You guys are awesome. We're out of here.
Thanks a lot.